As US and Cuba work to thaw chilly relations, US Secretary of State John Kerry raised the American flag above the US Embassy for the first time in 54 years. But many say it will take decades to improve attitudes of many Cubans towards the US. Elena left Cuba over 20 years ago with her Lithuanian husband and resettled in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. At the time, the Soviet Union and Cuba had close relations. I grew up thinking that Americans were bad and Russians were good. The two were clearly separated. It's going to be very hard for the Cubans to readjust. Elena adds that at the time, Cuba was not completely isolated from the world, despite the Cold War standoff with the US, which gave rise to the Bay of Pigs and the Cuban Missile Crisis. Cuba was never a closed-off island. Tourism was always developing, lots of Canadians and Italians. Elena's daughter, Christina, showed us some of her mother's relics from Cuba. Elena likes to reminisce about her past, although she hasn't been back for several years because she can no longer afford the cost of flights. I remember there was a period when there was no washing powder, but there was lots of toothpaste, so we washed our clothes with toothpaste. Everything came out clean. Here in Kyiv, the Cuban diaspora of around 400 people gathers for a night of salsa dancing. One visitor was skeptical about the new US-Cuba relations. This doesn't mean that relations between Cuba and the US will normalize. The blockade hasn't been lifted yet. But it seems now only time will tell if the US and Cuba will reach a resolution on some of the key points of contention, including trade embargoes and the naval base at Guantanamo Bay.